What's up guys, Jacob Ober here. In this video, I'm going to be giving you 3 bold predictions for the Milwaukee Brewers heading into the 2019 MLB season. Last year, if you didn't already know this, I'm sure most Brewer fans obviously do, the Brewers went all the way to Game 7 of the NLCS and they won the NL Central over the Chicago Cubs thanks to a red-hot month of September. So, this season, naturally, the Brewers have the highest expectations we've ever seen a Brewers team have in quite some time, so the bold predictions might be a little less bold than normal, but I'm still going to go with it, and this is the first time I've ever done a bold predictions for the Brewers. I did one back for the Green Bay Packers before last season. I don't really think any of those actually came true, but without further ado, let's get started here. My first bold prediction for the 2019 Milwaukee Brewers, I believe that Jesus Aguilar is going to regress significantly from last year, but that Ryan Braun and Mike Moustakas are going to counter that with all-star caliber years for the Milwaukee Brewers. This is kind of a bold take from me. I like Jesus Aguilar a lot, don't get me wrong. And I really hope that I'm wrong with him regressing, you know. He was an all-star last year, he put together a really, really solid year. But in the second half, he wasn't nearly the player he was in the first half. And there were some times where it just felt like he couldn't hit the baseball at all. And it really felt like pitchers kind of figured out his game. He chased a lot out of the strike zone, especially with those pitches that were down and away. He just could not figure out those breaking balls. So, to me, it would not be surprising to see him come out this coming year and hit 230 or 240 on the season and maybe finish with around 20 home runs and 70 to 80 RBIs, which is still pretty solid production, but I feel like we're probably going to see maybe more platooning, you know, with a left-handed player. Maybe Travis Shaw sees some time at first, or Eric Thames. Obviously, Eric Thames was the first baseman coming into last year, but Aguilar overtook him after that hand injury. But maybe they swap roles or something. Maybe Eric Thames has a really, really hot start again, or maybe he's able to continue a hot streak into the summer, and we end up seeing a platoon there or something like that. Obviously, this is all just speculation, but I just feel like Jesus Aguilar, of all the players on the Brewers right now, is most likely to suffer a little bit of at least a little bit of regression from last year, especially considering how poorly he was hitting the ball in the second half of the season last season. But Mike Moustakas and Ryan Braun having all-star caliber years, that's probably a little more crazy than Jesus Aguilar regressing, I'd say. But I feel like that Ryan Braun was injured a lot last year, and he has been for the past 2 years. I'm going to bank on him having a healthy year this year and playing around 140 games in the outfield, in which case I would say that Braun's going to hit around 30 home runs and get close to, if not more than 100 RBIs. And I could see him hitting anywhere between 280 and 300, maybe even over 300. And Mike Moustakas, of course, I feel like he wasn't as good as we expected him to be last year. He's still a really, really important piece to the puzzle in getting to the NLCS last year. But I feel like he could improve that production even more. And Miller Park obviously is a really, really great place for left-handed power hitters to play in Milwaukee. So I feel like with that extra year of familiarity with the team, with the ballpark, Mike Moustakas is going to return to hitting like 270, 280 and be the power numbers guy that we expect him to be. My second bold prediction for the 2019 Milwaukee Brewers, one of their starting pitchers will be in Cy Young talks late in the season. I don't know which one of these pitchers it will be. I think there's a lot of really, really underrated talent in the starting rotation, though. Obviously, you have Jhoulys Chacin, who has been the anchor of the rotation ever since middle of last year, and really, last year down the stretch, he pitched amazing. He was the Brewers' ace last season, and he was phenomenal. I don't know if it's going to be him or not. I feel like he's a guy who's going to give you a 3.50 ERA every year. He'll get you 15 to 20 wins, I think. But I don't know if he's going to be the guy to be in the Cy Young talks. Obviously, I'm not ruling it out because he is the most experienced and likely the best pitcher on the staff, at least at this point. But I feel like it might be one of the younger guys, or maybe even Jimmy Nelson coming back from injury. I mean, Jimmy Nelson has looked pretty solid in spring so far. He did have a little bit of a setback, I hear, but they expect him to be in AAA for the start of the season, and they also expect him to be on the roster, hopefully in by the end of April, I'd hope. But I feel like one of the younger guys might have the best chance, and I'm specifically leaning towards Brandon Woodruff, although I could also see Corbin Burnes. But Brandon Woodruff, the way he pitched in the postseason last year for the Brewers was outstanding, and the way he pitched really down the stretch of last season was phenomenal. This guy was like, he was so underrated. No one really talks about him outside of his big home run that tied the game at NLCS Game 1. But his pitching performances were really good, and I'm really looking forward to seeing this guy as a full-time starter in Milwaukee, as well as Corbin Burnes, who obviously is getting a lot of hype as being, the next ace for the Brewers. And I could definitely see that as well. And, of course, you also have your wild card, Freddie Peralta, who put together some really nice pitching performances last year, specifically the ones against Colorado and who's the other team? The Royals, that's right. I think he went 7 innings against the Royals and he only gave up like 1 run or something. That was a really awesome pitching performance, and he had the 13 strikeout game against the Rockies in Colorado, I think on Mother's Day. But all 3 of these young guys, I'm looking forward to watching them pitch this year because, I mean, people are really underrating them, but they're going to be blown out of their seats because I think these 3 guys, they're going to be really good for the Brewers. And like I said, I'm leaning towards Brandon Woodruff, but I could see any of them. And, I could see Chacin as well, and I could even see Jimmy Nelson as well. So there's a plethora of talent. One of them is going to blossom this year. My third, final, and perhaps boldest prediction for the 2019 Milwaukee Brewers, I believe they're going to win the NL Central again. I believe they're going to win the National League, and I believe they're going to win the World Series this year. This is a bold take. I think it is. Maybe not so much to people who are actually familiar with the Brewers, but certainly in, the national media and the baseball world, it might be a pretty bold prediction. It actually is a pretty bold prediction. That's why I included it in this video. But really, people who are familiar with the Brewers know that this team is not going to be any worse than they were last year. They returned several key contributors from last year, including the reigning MVP and Christian Yelich, and they added Yasmani Grandal, and their bullpen is still the best in the National League, even with injuries to Jeffers and Knebel. I mean, there's really no weakness I really see on this team. You can argue starting pitching, but really, a lot of the young guys who might be seen as inexperienced pitched some really, really high-pressure innings late last season and into the postseason. I mean, Brandon Woodruff was phenomenal in the postseason. Corbin Burnes was phenomenal down the stretch, and Freddie Peralta pitched in some high-leverage innings as well. So really, I just don't see where the weakness on this team is. I don't see it. And people saying that the Brewers are going to regress, in what department? I mean, maybe you have a couple of guys who regress, but there were some guys who didn't have great seasons last year or didn't take the next step forward, such as Orlando Arcia last season, that might be prime candidates to do that this season. I mean, it's baseball. Things happen, and you're going to have surprise contributors. You're going to have guys who don't play as well as you expect. But ultimately, I think in the grand scheme of things, there is the deepest level of talent in the National League on this Milwaukee Brewers team, both offensively and in the pitching staff. So to me, I think they should be the favorites in the National League. Of course, no one's taking them seriously because everybody in the national media doesn't like small markets. And they're saying the Brewers are going to regress because they're a small market. If this was the Chicago Cubs that did this last year, everyone would be penning the Chicago Cubs to go to the World Series this year. But it's the Milwaukee Brewers, so nobody cares, right? But people who know the Brewers know that this team is going to be really good this year, and I think that they are going to get all the way to the World Series, and I'm going to make the bold prediction of saying that they win it this year and win their first title in franchise history. So, anyways, guys, those are my 3 bold predictions for the 2019 Milwaukee Brewers. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. Do you have any bold predictions of your own for the 2019 Milwaukee Brewers? Leave your comment in the comments section below. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Go Brewers. Opening day this Thursday.